For years, Russell Westbrook has been one of the most polarizing players in NBA history. Some people see him as one of the most explosive point guards the league has ever seen. A former MVP, a nine-time All-Star, a player who averaged a triple-double for an entire season. Something the NBA had not seen since Oscar Robertson. But there has always been another side to the conversation. The criticism is simple. Russell Westbrook was a stat padder. The idea became especially popular during the years when Westbrook was chasing triple-doubles and putting up huge numbers. Critics argued that he cared more about filling up the box score than making the right basketball play. But is that actually fair? Let's start with why people call Westbrook a stat padder in the first place. Westbrook's rebounding numbers are probably the biggest reason. During his peak, Westbrook was averaging close to double-digit rebounds as a guard, and some of those rebounds look suspicious. Instead of allowing a big man to grab the defensive rebound, Westbrook would sometimes position himself near the basket and take the rebound himself. Critics argued that his teammates were intentionally letting him collect rebounds because it helped him reach triple-doubles. And when you're watching a 6'3" point guard grab 10 rebounds while playing alongside much bigger players, it's easy to understand why people started questioning it. But there's an important detail that often gets ignored. A defensive rebound is still a defensive rebound. If Westbrook was in position to secure the ball, there was nothing inherently wrong with him taking it. In fact, grabbing the rebound and immediately pushing the ball up the court was one of the biggest parts of his game. Westbrook didn't just rebound, he attacked. And that leads to another part of the stat padding argument: assists. Westbrook was an incredible passer, but critics believe that he sometimes hunted assists by forcing passes that weren't necessary. There were moments where he would give up a good scoring opportunity to pass to a teammate, seemingly because he was looking for another assist. And when you combine that with his aggressive rebounding, it created the perfect environment for the stat padding narrative. But here's where the argument gets complicated. If a player is deliberately trying to get statistics, that doesn't automatically mean those statistics aren't helping the team. Westbrook's triple-doubles weren't happening in meaningless situations every single night. He was winning games while doing it. During the 2016-17 season, Westbrook averaged 31.6 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 10.4 assists. That wasn't just a triple-double. That was an absurd offensive workload. He also won the MVP that season. And this is probably the strongest argument against calling him a pure stat padder. Westbrook's numbers were often the result of how much responsibility his teams gave him. He had the ball constantly. He was expected to create offense. He was expected to attack the basket. He was expected to rebound. And he was often the player responsible for initiating the entire offense. If you're handling the ball that much, you're naturally going to have more opportunities to accumulate points, rebounds, and assists. There's also something people forget about Westbrook's triple-doubles. He didn't need to score 40 points every night to get them. He could dominate a game in multiple ways. He could score. He could pass. He could rebound. He could push the pace. And when everything was working, Westbrook could completely overwhelm an opponent with his athleticism. The biggest problem with the stat padding criticism is that it sometimes confuses a player's style with their intentions. Westbrook played an extremely aggressive style of basketball. He attacked everything. He attacked the rim. He attacked passing lanes. He attacked rebounds. He attacked in transition. He played like every possession was a chance to make something happen. That style created incredible numbers, but it also created mistakes. And those mistakes are a huge reason the stat padder label stuck. Westbrook was never a low-risk player. He turned the ball over. He took questionable shots. He sometimes forced passes, and sometimes his desire to make a play hurt his team. That's a legitimate criticism. But saying he made mistakes while chasing statistics is different from proving that he intentionally sacrificed winning just to improve his numbers. And that's the key distinction. Was Westbrook obsessed with statistics? Probably to some degree. Almost every NBA player cares about their numbers. Points, assists, rebounds, efficiency, awards, all-star selections. Statistics matter in professional basketball. But Westbrook's personality made that competitiveness much more visible. He played with an incredible amount of emotion. He wanted to dominate. He wanted to win. And he wanted to prove himself. That mentality is part of what made him so entertaining. It's also part of what made him so frustrating. Another major point in this debate is the triple-double itself. For decades, a triple-double was treated as something special. Then Westbrook started doing it constantly. In 2016 to 17, he averaged one. In 2017 to 18, he averaged one again. In 2018 to 19, he averaged one again. 3 straight seasons averaging a triple-double, and eventually he broke Oscar Robertson's career triple-double record. That is not something that happens by accident. You can argue about how valuable every individual rebound or assist was, but you can't simply explain away thousands of accumulated statistics. Westbrook was one of the most productive players of his generation. The more reasonable criticism is not that every statistic was fake. It's that sometimes chasing those statistics could influence his decision-making. And there's evidence that supports that argument. There were games where Westbrook clearly appeared to hunt for rebounds. There were possessions where he seemed determined to get an assist. And there were moments when the pursuit of a triple-double became part of the story surrounding the game. But there's another question we have to ask. Did his teammates actually suffer because of it? Sometimes, yes. Westbrook's aggressive decision-making could hurt spacing, efficiency, and offensive consistency. But at other times, his rebounding helped his team start fast breaks. His passing created open shots. His ability to attack the rim created opportunities for everyone else. And his constant pressure on defenses made him one of the most difficult players in the league to contain during his prime. So calling him a stat padder without mentioning any of that gives an incomplete picture. There's also a major difference between Westbrook's early career and his later career. At his peak, Westbrook was physically dominant. He had the speed, strength, explosiveness, and endurance to turn his statistical production into real offensive impact. Later in his career, when his athleticism declined, the same aggressive style became much harder to sustain. The turnovers became more damaging. The missed jump shots became more noticeable. The lack of spacing became a bigger problem. And suddenly, statistics that once looked impressive weren't translating into the same level of impact. That's when the stat padding criticism became even louder. People would look at a Westbrook box score and say, "Look at the triple-double, he must have played well." Then they would watch the game and see something completely different. And that's an important lesson about basketball statistics. A box score can tell you what happened. It doesn't always tell you how valuable those things were. 10 rebounds aren't automatically equally valuable. 10 assists aren't automatically equally valuable. 30 points aren't automatically equally valuable. Context matters. And Westbrook is probably one of the best examples of why box score statistics need context. So, was Russell Westbrook a stat padder? The honest answer is, sometimes there were moments when it looked like he was chasing numbers. There's enough evidence to understand why people develop that opinion. But calling his entire career stat padding is unfair. You don't accidentally become an MVP. You don't accidentally average a triple-double for multiple seasons. You don't accidentally become the NBA's all-time leader in triple-doubles. And you certainly don't accidentally produce the kind of offensive workload Westbrook carried for years. Westbrook was an extremely aggressive player who cared deeply about his production. Sometimes that aggression probably crossed the line into forcing statistics. But a lot of the time, those same statistics were simply a byproduct of how much responsibility he had and how hard he played. Maybe the better way to describe Russell Westbrook isn't as a stat padder. Maybe he was a player whose strengths and weaknesses were both amplified by the same thing: his relentless desire to make something happen. That mentality gave us one of the most explosive point guards basketball has ever seen. It also gave us some of the most frustrating possessions we've ever watched. So when someone says, Russell Westbrook was a stat padder, there's a little bit of truth in the criticism. But if they use that label to explain his entire career, they're missing the bigger picture. Because Russell Westbrook didn't just chase numbers, he chased dominance. And sometimes those two things looked exactly the same.